This is Coda Radio, episode 45 for April 15th, 2013. Hi everyone, and welcome to Coda Radio, Jupiter Broadcasting's weekly talk show, taking a pragmatic look at the art and business of software development and related technologies. Live Monday mornings and noon Easterns over at jblive.tv. This episode's brought to you by GoDaddy.com. I'll tell you more about them as the show goes on. My name is Chris, and joining us every single week is our host, Mr. Michael Dominic. Hey there, Michael.
Good morning, Chris. How are you?
Good morning to you, sir. How are you doing?
I'm good.
I hear you might have a new computer over there this week. I'm pretty excited about that. I always love talking to somebody who's got some new gear because I get to live vicariously through them.
I do. My Mac Mini is being replaced by a Dell XPS, I want to say 8500 tower.
Nice. And this one is kind of interesting because you got one of those signature PCs from Microsoft.
Indeed. And for those who don't know, what that means is you buy it from Microsoft or at the Microsoft store, and it comes, shall we say, purged of crap.
So do they actually take it from Dell and uninstall everything? They don't actually just get a clean image?
I have no idea how that works.
I kind of get the impression they might actually, was the box opened when you got it, or was it totally sealed from the factory?
Totally sealed. I get the feeling that they just saved all the time and say, don't install anything other than Windows, and we'll do it. Thanks.
Well, that's not what this week's episode's about. No, It was fun. We were chatting a little gear on the pre-show, so you guys should always join us live over at jblive.tv and hang out in our chat room, and we have the calendars. Go to jupiterbroadcasting.com/calendar where you can see when we're live. But Mr. Dominic, we have a potpourri of things today, from the topic of Always Online, LucasArts, and a bunch of feedback, and a little update from some of your adventures in the App Store. I mean, we got a ton of stuff, but should we start with the feedback today?
Yeah, let's get moving. We could start with the feedback. We can knock this first one out real quick.
Ninja style.
Callie, or Khalil, since I accidentally dropped the L in his name, writes in to ask if we think Jolla Cloud or Jolla phone system will take off, and I can go with the firm no.
Ouch. Yeah. So you're just what is it, the term bearish on all kinds of those types of operating systems? That's just what it is, man.
Like, nope. Sorry.
Yeah. I would love to see it take off, but I don't have a lot of hopes for it either. Myself.
If they're gonna go with something like that for the carriers, I think just skinning Android makes more sense for the manufacturers, I should say. Oh,
that's a dark world I don't want to live in.
Yeah, but it just does. So we actually have talked about Jolla once before. I don't know the show number, but I would encourage you to go back to that. There were some other weird things. That was when it was kind of in preview mode.
Right.
Yeah, so I'd encourage you to take a look at that.
All right. Do you want me to read Brandon's email?
Go for it.
All right, I'll do that. I don't mind it. It gives me a chance to maybe mispronounce his name. He says, "Hey guys, I work at a small dev shop. Our department consists of 2 devs and the VP of Technology and Development. The VP basically wears the hat of project manager. Here is the issue. We really need the value of BDD and TDD, but it's not in our culture." What's BDD and TDD?
I'm assuming he means behavior-driven development and test-driven development.
Of course. He wants to ingrain it into the culture. He says any planning tools, books, etc. would be appreciated. P.S. We are a PHP and Java shop, PPS. If you're interested, the value that we are seeing is that with BDD and TDD, it forces the discipline of well-documented business logic. The issue we currently have is that any time there is an issue, the VP is asking how the code behaves. If we have the behavior well documented with tests to prove it behaves that way, it will save us a lot of time and digging. That's an interesting argument there, Brandon. So I guess what he's really asking is, what changes does he need to make to sort of ingrain better practices into the culture of a small development shop? I mean, we're talking 2 devs and a VP here.
Yeah, so I actually think this is a fallacy. I've seen a lot of groups do it, where they have some obvious problems in their development flow. Things aren't working, lots of regressions, or spaghetti code, or desperate hacks, long nights, the normal nightmares you hear about. And they find a development model. Usually it's agile, right? Or some idea, agile, test first, test driven, business driven, behavior driven, whatever. And they make that a religion. but they still find that they have the same problems.
Do you think it's another form of focusing on the tools? Like I've noticed in my client work that when I have certain clients, especially like the CEOs and stuff, when they're under a lot of stress, they start blaming the tools and the gear a lot. It's sort of like trying to solve a solution by throwing equipment at it. And I wonder if maybe they're trying to solve a problem by throwing processes and procedures and standards at it. But at the same time, it's kind of hard to make that argument wholly, right? Because you could definitely see there is some sort of efficiencies to be gained in a team environment, especially when you're dealing with somebody who's not a developer, but you still have to report to them and explain things to them.
There are efficiencies, but the problem is, if you're already dealing with thousands of lines of spaghetti code that no one's willing to touch, right? There's a whole module that no one wants to touch because the guy who wrote it had to hack it and work on the weekend, and then he quit because he was burned out, which is a very common scenario in organizations like one Brandon sounds to be in.
Yeah.
Well, right there's only one solution, and it's not going to be amenable to the business types. Delete the code, start from zero, and then you can implement your process from a fresh place. Now, that's not a realistic solution, right? Because you just can't. Business-wise, you just can't do that. So it's going to... One strategy I often employ when I come into these type of projects is, let's say we're doing, 20 hours of my time a week, and they have some serious technical debt, and they want X features. And I tell them, well, you really can't just add these features. We'll do 50% moving forward, 50% rewriting code that's in some way bad. I can tell you that that's a hard sell. Because for a lot of business types, if it runs, it runs.
Yeah, that is so true, man. That is so true.
And the only thing that can save you is you said you're on. I mean, it would almost be better if you were on a proprietary platform, because then when the vendor changes the underlying platform, you're forced to upgrade and throw out some of your code.
God, you are preaching a situation that I have been in for the last couple of months.
But since you're on PHP and Java, you can sit with that old PHP app, that old Java app,
and you can just keep poking at it and keep moving it a little bit as you need. Oh God, this is so where I'm stuck. And it's interesting because I'm putting myself in his shoes now, and what it really is it's almost like you want to adopt these processes and these procedures, so that way that's what's being scrutinized and not the code. Well, I followed process, I followed the procedure, I documented correctly, and then you critique and you analyze and you manage based on that and not on the results of the actual code that's written.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really complicated problem because you're not going to... I mean, certainly some process would help. Now, I don't know how TDD is going to help you if you're already in trouble.
Yeah.
Right? If there's already a big problem, what, are you going to go back and rewrite tests for everything? I mean, I know I'm conflating TDD and test first, but generally you don't do BDD and TDD together, right? You pick one. And it sounds like you're at the point where any solution to this problem is going to require sign-off from, someone pretty high in the business side, and they're going to have to eat the cost. Because at some level, refactoring is going to be the answer if you have those kind of problems. Now, if it's a pure communication issue with your superiors, then I don't know that you need to go full out TDD. I mean, what kind of project management tools are you using? And I find the simpler ones like Basecamp are sufficient, right? Because they don't need to know that you wrote 200 lines of code. They just need to know what was and wasn't done and what roadblocks in a very high level, perspective there are. And if they don't trust you on your word, or they want to somehow see the code and they're not technical, that's, dysfunction at the highest levels, right? That's a human resources problem. I mean, if they're standing over your shoulder saying, well, you'd only checked in 200 lines of code today, last week you were doing like 500 a day, what's going on here? Then I'd say polish that resume. But Brandon, if you want to write in again with a little more detail about, it sounds to me, my bet would be that you're dealing with a lot of legacy code.
Yeah.
And that's unfortunately...
It sounds like a situation that both you and I have been in more than we'd like to have recalled. I mean, honestly, where you start to get in this problem, technical debt is such a great term, and And it really is this debt that you inherit, and then it almost becomes like unmanageable. It really does.
Well, and the problem I often face is that, you replace someone on a project and you're in this weird situation of having to simultaneously blame them, right? But if you come off as blaming them, it's a poor reflection on you.
Yep.
Right? Because the thing I hate is, oh, well, the other guy got it done. Yeah, but he worked every weekend and he worked, 14-hour days.
Yep.
And I'm like, dude, if you're paying for 8 hours, you're getting 8 hours.
My other favorite one that I get is, well, these queries used to happen a lot faster. These updates used to execute much faster. I don't understand why now that you're doing this, it's not working as fast as it did when he was here before. And it's like, okay, well, stuff moves on. Systems get bigger. Databases get larger. So sometimes you end up coming in right as somebody kind of ducks out because it's starting to collapse around itself.
And I mean, I've had situations where I've talked to the contractor that was previously working on the project, and oftentimes they give up their personal lives and then they just burn out and leave, right?
Yeah.
Or even employees do it. And that's a cultural problem, and that's a management problem. If they're unwilling to hear that there could be issues that need to be refactored, then you're not going to get anywhere.
It really is their mistake, the management's mistake. It is their mistake for becoming so dependent. You don't have to be a technical person to understand that a certain aspect of your business is becoming dependent on a single person. And I think a lot of times with technology, because it's digital, it's online, it's not something you see every single day. A lot of business owners and VPs, they kind of take for granted the actual dependency that their company has on a technology. And you always see this at a company when email goes down. Right.
Oh,
then it becomes, well, we're not getting orders. Did you know web orders come in over email? Did you know we get confirmations? We can't get those if the email's down. We're not making any money, right? And all of a sudden, email becomes one of the most critical systems to the function of the business. But when email's up and running, we don't want to spend the money on upgrading the storage, blah blah blah. Right? It's the same thing with applications.
I have literally been in this situation where I get into an organization and I give them an estimate that they don't like, and it's usually not the money, to be honest with you. It's usually the time.
Yeah.
Right. And when I say, so it's like, well, how many days? So I said, well, weeks. And they said, well, maybe talk to, our former employee, they give you the phone number, which they're not supposed to do, by the way. And I've actually been in this situation where I've called them and I've said, so what happened here? And of course, they're always agile shops and they always have sprints. And the sprint always has a hard stop date. Yet you can keep adding issues to the sprint, right? And you can keep tweaking features during the sprint. So a sprint that might have been 10 tickets is now 30. And the guy is working weekends and nights because he needs the job.
Yep.
Right. Instead of just doing what I do and saying, hey, we're always going to miss these goals. Which is the benefit of being a contractor, because if you get fired, it doesn't matter, right? There's no employment record to say you were terminated.
The Zen approach to development. Well, you know what? We're going to do the best we can.
To be honest, I used to be the other guy I'm talking about, and I was once in particular. And here's the thing. If you hit those extra 20 tickets that week, there'll be 25 next week.
Yep. I was that guy for a long time.
Yeah, and I just don't do it anymore. I'm like, well, we can continue to add scope here, but, I would not print those marketing materials just yet.
It's funny because we were talking about the differences between, this actually I'll save this for a future topic, but I'll write it down for a future topic. But there's a little bit of a little bit of my personal background I want to share at some point, maybe in a future episode when we talk about how we've approached some of these things with clients, where we said, hey, look, you've got this technical debt that we've got to manage, and they don't want to hear it. They don't want to hear that, but it's so frequent that it's still something I'm still evolving my approach at. So I think that could be an interesting conversation for a future show.
Yeah, we should definitely do it maybe in a coming week.
Yeah.
All right, so Nehemiah is nice enough to share some QML buttons, which there's a link to in the notes. Someone last episode wrote in asking for some samples.
Okay.
And Chris, we have Ashish coming. Actually, I'm going to summarize Ashish's email because we're running a little long on the feedback.
All right.
Basically, the main point, the Ouya.
Oh, the Ouya, yeah.
He doesn't agree that the Ouya will be that successful because the main market will be the quote cheapo crowd, right?
Ouch. That's assuming, But I guess that is who they're kind of going after with the free games.
I kind of think he's right.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think that's going to be terrible though, right? Because the cheapo crowd already spends more money on free-to-play games on iPhone.
Interesting.
Than the quote premium crowd who'd be willing to pay $1 or $2 for an app.
And MMOs are going more and more going free to play, and
Free-to-play.
they're seeing some good revenue there. Okay, all right. So you're saying maybe this is okay. And actually, let's zoom out and I don't mean to get political on Coda Radio, but the economy overall is for general consumers is not great, and they have less money these days, and so. This is sort of a psychological way to still get them to spend money when things are a little tighter. You get them in at a cheaper price point, and then you offer them these free titles, in-app purchases, things like that. Maybe this is the right console for our current economic situation. And I know I'm getting a little political, but I just putting that out there.
It could very well be. I mean, $60 is a lot of money these days for a game.
Yeah, man, it is a lot. It is more money. Yeah. Like I don't play on Windows very much, and I decided I wanted to try, not Tomb Raider, BioShock, the new BioShock. Right. I really had to give that some thought because I don't just toss $60 at anything anymore, and I would much rather if I could buy it as I play. I know people would hate that, but because I might not play the whole game, if I could just pay for what I use, I'd be down for that.
Yeah, and I know the cost to develop the games has gone way up.
Yeah, that's true. And that game is incredible. I mean, it is worth every penny.
Yeah, so. I've been playing it too. But yeah, it's I think Ouya is reacting, as Chris has suggested, to a reality. It's not a pretty reality, right?
Well, and don't you think the success of the Kickstarter kind of indicates demand, or is it just maybe in a bubble?
Well, the problem is a lot of those Kickstarter people might be like Linux enthusiasts who are unlikely to use it as it comes, right? We're super likely to slap like XBMC on it.
Well, hello, that's what I plan to do.
I know, which isn't great if you're trying to sell software, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. I mean, I'm very curious to see what price points the next quote real consoles come in at. Because if they're $500 each or more, I'm not sure they're going to sell gangbusters like they did last generation.
Yeah, and it almost seems like if they're, yeah, you're right.
That's going to be a hard purchase for a lot of people.
Especially up against tablets and all that stuff that's kind of come into that price category. Those things have sort of filled that category because those consoles haven't been revved for 6+ years.
Yeah, and that's... the economy is sad. All right, moving right along to other news.
Yeah.
So a lot of feedback on the Chrome Blink thing.
I thought we might get some feedback on that. So if you guys haven't caught last week's episode, we dove into Google's announcement that they'll be forking WebKit and launching Blink, and that'll become the new rendering engine for Chrome.
So we got enough feedback that I've decided just to boil it all into one.
Okay.
Most of it was very extreme, either one way or the other. Some people went as far as to say, well, Google won't do anything bad because they're Google.
Yeah, so we always get some of that.
A little crazy.
Yeah.
Others, are a little more on the tinfoil hat side with me. Oh, this is just another ploy to, whatever. Google wants to take over the web.
Yeah, okay.
Obviously both extremes are probably not really realistic.
Well, maybe.
I mean, I would say let's just, Blank will, bottom line, it's going to be something else you have to test against.
Is the browser not sort of the operating system for the web?
Right. I mean,
aren't they trying to just pull a Microsoft in this new operating system space with the way Microsoft became the monopoly for the desktop operating system? They just want to become the monopoly for
right. Well, they're pulling an IE6. I mean, we talked about this at length last week. So if you missed it, go ahead and listen. But the bottom line is they're pulling an IE6. The idea is Chrome will have features that the rest of the operating. Now you have me calling them operating systems. The rest of browsers will not.
Right.
They'll encourage you to develop for Chrome. But let's, we'll see how it goes, right? People feel very strongly about this one way or the other.
I think it will be one thing that we didn't touch on last week, and I'll just make a quick mention of this, just to be curious. I know one of the core focuses of Blink is designing a rendering engine that takes proper advantage and makes concessions for ARM chips. And I don't know much about that, but I read that in one of their posts that they're looking at ARM. And now is it going to be interesting to start seeing mainstream desktop software that's potentially, is this going to be one of the first big products we know of that was maybe built for ARM first and then, also built for the desktop? that could be interesting to watch how that develops.
Yeah, we'll have to see. I mean, the only one, let's say, advice I would offer the people who wrote in would be, if this were a Microsoft or Apple Blink, would you be so supportive? Right, because ultimately a new rendering engine's a new rendering engine, no matter who does it.
I think the only one I would probably, but I would still kind of scoff a little bit, would be the Mozilla project. I think I could.
Well, they're doing their own thing with Rust, and they are doing some interesting stuff,
Sure.
but they've lost a good deal of market share to Chrome.
Yeah,
and that's not great.
No, it's not great for them.
For them, yeah. All right, let's move along. I mean, this is a story that's going to play out in months.
Yeah, we got plenty of time to watch how that goes. But we'd still like to hear your guys' thoughts. And one note before we move on from the feedback. So we have coderradio.reddit.com, the subreddit that was set up by the community that we are now embracing. And the subreddit is approaching this point where it's almost active enough to kind of influence the show, but not quite active enough that it's really making any kind of difference. So if you'd like to jump in on that now, we're still trying to grow that a little bit, and it's kind of new, so now's a good time to get in there. And, we're checking that before the shows during the pre-show, looking for threads that might be relevant or stories. So anything you can do, discussion threads, comments, links, vote things up and down, any of that kind of stuff could help out over at coderradio.reddit.com, and we'll start checking that on the pre-shows. All right, Mr. Dominic, before we move on to some of our topics this week, I want to stop and thank our sponsor, GoDaddy.com. GoDaddy.com has joined the Coder Radio program because they love this show. And, I don't know, maybe Danica's an advocate. Maybe she just loves my hair. I'm not sure what it is. But GoDaddy.com is sponsoring Coder Radio, and we'd love it if you guys would support them as a way of supporting our show. When you're over at GoDaddy, use the code CODER295, and you'll get a .com for $2.95. Coder, because it's Coder Radio, $2.95 because it's $2.95. And here's the thing, also works for transfers. I did it for the transfer, and I was pleasantly reminded how smooth and slick the GoDaddy domain transfer process is. So if you're working with a group of people that have a .com for their project, for whatever their business, whatever they're doing, and they're not on GoDaddy, make your life easier when you're doing a collaboration and move it over to GoDaddy and take advantage of Coder 295. Not only is it super easy to do, but then you get the permissions management panel where you can each have your own accounts, but everybody gets access to the same stuff. You can delegate. It's really, really nice. So Coder 295 to transfer that domain for $2.95. That also gets you a year of that domain, which is awesome. Or you can just buy a .com for $2.95 with Coder 295. And thank you to GoDaddy, the world's #1 domain name registrar, for advertising on Coder Radio. All right, Mr. Dominic. Dun, 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 dun. I wish I had like a little GoDaddy trumpet music after I was done reading that.
Alrighty then.
Let's jump into one of our first Hoopla topics. I have a couple of notes here. Should we start with a little code journal update?
Oh, we can do that.
You want to do that? Okay.
So we are still doing very well downloads wise.
Still free in the App Store?
Still free in the App Store.
You're celebrating the tax day. By the way, today's tax day. Happy tax day, everybody.
There's nothing happy about tax day.
No, there's not. Trust me. Oh my God.
Yes.
Oh my God. Trust me.
Yeah. So I mean, we've more or less made it through the token issues.
Hello, everybody.
There's still. Damn it, Barack! I don't want to talk to you anymore. I hate you. You're ruining everything.
Yes.
So we have an update pending Apple to separate both apps to be not using the same tokens.
Good.
That will be good.
Yes.
And there's details about what happened and a little thank you note on my site. It's the newest post to mdominic.com. But yeah, it's doing well.
So can I ask you now, with this slow update things aside, has this positive experience in the App Store changed sort of your overall tone?
So it's been weird. It confirmed the bimodal review theory. Unfortunately, some people did hit the token issue and
raged in the comments.
They raged and they one-starred, and that's fine. Other people didn't and gave it good ratings. So that's fine. It's a little interesting that when it was a paid app, people seem to read the description and know what it did.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
And now that it's free, a lot of people seem to have just downloaded it and thought it was a Git client.
That makes a lot of sense. I could see that.
Which I don't know how much the audience knows about the Mac App Store, but even Atlassian's Git client doesn't work properly from the Mac App Store because of the sandboxing rules.
Requires file system access, I'm sure.
Right. So to do a full-featured Git client isn't really feasible. And I've gotten a lot of feature requests for that sort of thing to like read the file system and scan the, the local statuses, the local events.
It almost is atrocious how the fact that you can't do that in the App Store.
Right, which isn't super doable. And when I say super doable, isn't really doable at all. I would have to.
Dude, overall, though, your average
around
ratings are great. You're doing great.
Yeah, overall, I mean, there's been a few unhappy people. One guy hit the token issue and freaked out, and that's okay.
Yeah.
A lot of people have emailed me directly with nice stuff, which would be awesome in the App Store too, guys. But yeah, it's been an interesting experience. It's yeah, I mean, it's overall been very positive. The only thing is that, like this token issue, if it wasn't, if there wasn't a review process, that would have been settled in hours.
By the way, the token issue is the GitHub token issue where
right. So you run out of tokens, and additionally, you run out of concurrent requests. So even if you still have a few tokens, if people are all using it at once, they actually slow you down.
Double whammy.
Right, or that's what seems to have happened.
And which is more likely when it's a brand new app, people are checking it out, they're trying it.
Right, and it shot up the charts. It shot up the charts so fast that people have probably never seen it before, which is fine. No, overall, I'm very happy. The token issues will be sorted. It's really up to Apple at this point. And it seems to be working. It seems to have mostly been resolved for most users, which is good.
Mm-hmm.
And it'll totally resolve in the next update. So yeah, thank you guys for downloading it. Thank you for the great feedback. I'm so sorry about tax season.
Yeah, it's still free for a little bit longer. Just go
still free for a bit longer.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was an interesting experience about how the App Stores really encourage free as the download price.
Definitely,
yeah.
Huh?
Yeah.
All right. Well, speaking of something else that's becoming free, LucasArts, some of LucasArts' old assets.
Oh, unnecessary.
I know, too soon. I'm sorry. I just couldn't help it was a really good segue.
Oh, my Lord.
So we didn't get a chance to talk about this last week, but boy, did my jaw drop when I saw this headline because some of my favorite games have come from LucasArts.
Yeah, I mean, well, they've been published by LucasArts, and I think that's the key, unless you're talking about the older ones.
Well, I am, but yes, both.
Okay, so the older ones they developed, the newer ones they were just the publisher, but
yeah,
LucasArts hasn't done great as a developer in a long time. Some of my favorite games from them were Jedi Academy and Jedi Outcast, which were actually developed by Ravensoft, but published by LucasArts. Right. And Ravensoft has open sourced the code.
Yeah, not the assets. So you still got to have the assets, but all of the code, and there's already ports that are being built. It's I think it's based on the Quake 3 engine, so it's not too much work there.
Right. And it's I spent some time reading through the code. It's very interesting how they did things.
Oh yeah. Oh, how so?
No, it looks good. There's a whole there's a whole subdirectory called Mac. That looks unpleasant for someone.
So what do you think? Yeah. This is sort of maybe a trend. Do you think maybe as these companies shut down, some of the stuff might be open sourced as long as they can? I mean, I'm an open source hippie, so I would love to see that. I just feel like this kind of thing.
Better that these companies didn't shut down. I mean, this year has seen over a dozen studios shut down. High novelty, high renowned studios have been shut down, right? I mean, Sony itself shut down 3. We had 39 studios went down in dramatic fashion. I don't know, Chris, if you remember, that's the one that was developed with a grant from the state of Rhode Island. I mean, this year has been rough, right?
And there was the one that went with the Humble Bundle route, trying to raise some funds. I'm blinking right now on their name, but the chat room might know.
I think Ubisoft.
No, there was they did the there was a big deal because they did a Humble Bundle that didn't have a Linux version, and they still had some. Yeah, I can't remember, but anyways.
Yeah.
THQ.
I'm sorry, I was thinking THQ, not Ubisoft. Ubisoft's still around.
Yeah.
No, but THQ and all of THQ studios. Basically gone. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a rough. Well, I mean, we're kind of getting on the economy topic again.
Yeah, and
it affects the software industry, and that's just the reality. I mean, the show is about the business of software development, and
as the cost of this type of software goes up, but not proportion to the cost you're charging the user. I mean, voice acting itself is far more expensive than you would think.
Well, and also you have the pressure of free web apps, you have the pressure of piracy, and you have the pressure of cheap app stores. That's why prices for the consumers aren't going up to afford these increased productions is because there's a ton of downward pressure there.
Yeah, and this does tie into Ashish's email that we read earlier about the Ouya.
That's true.
But yeah, I mean, and this isn't just about games, right? I mean, games are being hit hardest, but it is more and more less attractive to build a really large, full-featured application when when you know that it's going to be tough to get significant downloads without a large marketing investment anyway, unless you're cheap or free. And the definition of cheap these days isn't what it used to be.
Yeah, we're in this weird transition period where
$10 is expensive for software.
Yeah, and it's sold through an app store, and the marketing is sort of still really essential there because anybody can write an app, but still the gatekeepers of the marketing information are still like these big websites and media outlets, and so it's like really hard for anybody who can write an app to then get publicity through
and
those
a lot
channels.
Of the marketing is still done based on personal connections and who's been to whose conference. It's as much as they've opened up the market, they've also closed it a little, right?
Yeah.
And what you're going to see more is of what EA is doing, adding in-app purchases to every product they make. Chris, I don't know if you saw that announcement, but they are doing that. And you're going to see more free software with paid upgrades, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, right? That's what the market seems to demand.
I guess that's what I was just kind of advocating for with BioShock a little bit.
Yeah, and I think that's what Ashish was getting at with his Ouya point. It's a reality of the market, and we're going to have a lot of developers that do it in a very dirty fashion, and it rubs you the wrong way. Let's talk. Name any free-to-play MMO. I mean, SWTOR is probably the least horrible one, right? But that's a pretty new one.
Mm-hmm.
Name any game made by a certain company that used to do Facebook games.
Right.
Farmville.
Right. All in app,
but all very spammy.
Very spammy.
And it's unfortunate, but this is the way the market's gone, and this is the way users want to go. And honestly, as a user myself, it kind of makes sense because it's easy to spend a lot of money on an iPad or a Surface, right?
Yep.
But if I could get the app for free, at least a trial, and I think that's really what hurt this is that Apple never allowed trials.
Right. Well, it's because they are stealing value to put it into their product in a sense. So they're giving you, so you're buying a $500 iPad, but you are maybe getting $1,000 worth of software value because the way they have built the market so that developers are forced to lower the prices. And they can stand by and say, well, look, this is what our customers demand, and look at all these profits these top 30 people are making. So obviously it's doable. And in the reality, it's just so that way they can sell a device and then it gets a ton of software for really cheap.
Yeah, but this sounds, and it's a bad analogy, but it does work to a point. The days when, all the graybeards were complaining that all this GUI stuff is dumbing down, it's devaluing the power of the software. You can fight the tide, but you're going to lose. Right? I don't know, Chris, do you really think you could write a piece of software and sell it for $1,000 like you used to be able to?
Not unless it's very specialized for business and enterprise.
Right. And that's the thing. In this consumer market, it's funny. Like when I read reviews in the app stores for like $2 apps, people complaining they didn't get their money's worth. You can barely buy a cup of coffee for $2, not $200. Yeah.
Well,
$1.99.
So I look at it. So here is this, not to tangent us too much, but so Jupiter Broadcasting over at jupiterbroadcasting.com/donate, we have donation links there. And there's enough people out there that are pretty generous. They'll help us out, and it kind of goes up and down. It's kind of a little low right now, and we to separate out Unfiltered to kind of establish a supporter base there. We set up a $13.33 a month donation, and essentially that was a goal to essentially cover one day of production for me, just my time, instead of going to a client or something like that at a very low rate. And we've had about 65 people sign up. Now, a lot of people say, that price is way too high. Way too high. $13 a month for one show is really expensive, they say. And to me, I look at it and I think, well, so their perspective is they turn on the TV and they see this very high produced, very high production show, and they think, I'm getting that for free. Of course, they're paying their cable company, but they're essentially getting the show for free. What they don't realize is the deferred cost system that's there. That show is being broadcast to 10 million, 5 million people, and they have advertisers that are essentially financing the production of that. Where it's a different situation. Where here it's sort of more independently created and it's more directly connected to the audience, and there's more direct relationship there. And the problem is there's sort of this mindset that people have to overcome, and once it clicks with them, they see the value there. But when they come at it and look at it from the surface level, they think, "Geez, I'm not spending that kind of money for something like that."
Well, also, bringing it back to the app topic, and actually there is another topic we forgot that I'll throw in. There is no GoDaddy, there is no Ting, there is no, Pluralsight advertising, right? The advertising for apps, you get a quarter of a penny per total click through.
Right.
It's not feasible.
Right.
It's just not. So the only money you're going to get at a 30% VIG, which actually what the app stores do is worth 30%. Is from your users. And if they're unwilling to pay, then you need to think of a creative way to get them to pay. And that's where we're getting all these free-to-play games, which ironically, then you get sued for a patent using in-app purchases and you lose all the money anyway. So, hey, you just can't win. So the other topic, Chris, that ties into this is, did you hear about the app gratis story?
No, tell me about this.
It is was a, let's say, app ranking and marketing tool on the App Store, the Apple App Store, so the iOS store.
Okay.
That Apple has pulled down.
Oh, really?
According to the app gratis people, they had several million users and about 50 employees or 45 employees, whatever the number is.
And now what?
Exactly.
Oh, wow.
This has caused some controversy because, A, they've been on the store for a very long time, and they haven't done anything that they haven't been doing before. And Apple has just decided to enforce a rule that they kind of didn't enforce. And the rule would be having app stores in the App Store, right? So App Gratis is a ranking tool, and it tells you when things perhaps dropped in price or whatever. This is another issue when now you're in a market where you can't charge a lot of money because people won't pay. People will give you $0 or $1, and they expect the quality of a $50 application, and will flame you in the reviews if they don't get it. Oh, and the vendor can decide to throw your app out because it's Tuesday and they didn't get their sandwich. I mean, really, this is going to be another downer podcast.
How did that happen? We had such a good pre-show. We were talking about your new computer.
I know. I don't know what the hell happened here. LucasArts.
Yeah.
I just want another KOTOR.
You're right. I don't know what happened.
No, it's yeah, this is and to be fair, I mean, reading the guideline and having looked at App Gratis, they broke it, right? Like, they broke the rules, but they've been breaking it for how long?
But to be fair, they probably, I mean, at the same time, that's kind of like, a rule comes along when you're already around doing your thing that says you can't do what you're doing. I mean, what can they do?
Well, I mean, even Amazon couldn't do anything.
They just they just probably hope and pray they're grandfathered in.
Right, and as we've seen before, that's never the case. So I don't know where this leaves us. It's really, I mean, developing an app is tough, and you know what? The day you hit submit, it just gets harder.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the bottom line.
Jezruk asks, and I don't know the answer, does the Android App Store have a no App Store rule? It might. I mean, see, the other thing
the Android App Store is a little weird, though. They have rules, but they don't.
Well, and the other thing is you can have different stores, so it doesn't really matter in some sense.
Android's a different ballgame, but still the revenue potential on Android isn't, or it hasn't proven to be as effective as iOS yet.
Yeah. All right, Mr. Dominic. I want to talk about this sort of controversy that was born on Twitter, and it's something that you and I have kicked around with always-on type computing that requires some sort of connectivity with maybe like Sims or Azure, whatever it might be. It kind of fits in with that category. Do you want to shift gears to this, or any other thoughts on that gratis app?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Someone put in the chat you can buy CodeJournal for $2.99 on the Ubuntu Software Center. That is not true at all.
I think he's just trolling you.
Okay, I was gonna be like,
Just
Okay.
trolling. Just trolling. Oh yeah, we need more. We need more title suggestions too. Jeez,
Yes.
jeez. All right, why don't we shift gears? You ready?
So the always online thing, yeah, let's phrase it. Um, so Adam Orth, creative director for the Xbox division at Microsoft, was, shall we say, trolling his friend. Is that fair, Chris? Is that a
Yeah.
fair characterization of what he
Essentially,
was
it
doing?
was like the world's moving to always online, and games are going to always require connectivity. Deal with it, right?
Right. And of course, in its normal fashion, Twitter did not deal with it well.
Here's what he said, quote for quote. Sorry, I don't get the drama around always having an always-on console. Every device now is always on. That's the world we live in. Hashtag deal with it.
Yeah, then he has the picture of Obama with his BlackBerry, which is hilarious. But
I like a hashtag deal
yeah,
with it.
and he goes on to say, I still buy vacuum cleaners even though the electricity goes out. So the snark continues.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And you can find the tweets. He's actually protected his Twitter account now. I actually agree with him to a point. Given that these consoles are going to have, Microsoft is going to want to get another 8 years out of this console, at least, maybe 10.
Yeah.
I don't agree that it's the world we live in, but I think in 2 to 3 years it will be, at least in North America, the world we live in. And the sad part is, unfortunately, lots of other countries are better off than North America in this one regard. Particularly the Midwest of the United States is not so great.
I don't think it requires that everybody have internet connectivity. All it requires is that Microsoft look at the market and say, the people who we are interested in selling to are the people that have connectivity, and we think that's a large enough customer base now that we can sell only to them.
Right, and more importantly, this is a software thing. They could have this in but turn it off for a year. Right? They could. This isn't going to be like a hardware change. This is easy to turn on and off, or it should be. The only caveat to that is if it's a DRM feature. Then it becomes a problem. Right? Because if certain publishers use it and others don't, that's going to be an issue. And again, of people who are going to be buying a new console the year it comes out for $500+, yeah, they probably do need, they probably do have a good internet connection, or one would hope. And also, it's funny that Microsoft is getting all this crap, which, you know what, to me, the biggest mistake they made was they didn't say anything. Right? If they had just come out, yes, it's always online, but always online only means a heartbeat to the server every 3 hours.
Right. Maybe.
We could do that on a 56K modem.
Yeah, I think always online means you're getting involved with all the different aspects of the online experience.
But if you look at the PS4's features, maybe it doesn't require the internet connection, but sure as hell isn't going to work too great without it, right? I mean, think about their what was the Gaiku stuff? They want to have the streaming demos, the streaming downloading, background updating. And if you go through the list of things, the social integration, all of that requires the network. So it's just kind of funny that by coming out and saying all these features, Sony was able to dodge a bullet. Because I think the fear isn't that the console is going to be integrated with the network, because they're all integrated with the network, right? Even Mac OS is. Windows 8 is, without the internet, computers really aren't great anymore. It's that it'll be used as DRM. Would you agree with that? That's the fear.
Absolutely.
Right. I mean, do you think that's something they could actually do and not shoot themselves in the face? Like, I feel like this. I feel like it's so unwise that it can't be true, and by not saying that it's not true, they've just hurt themselves and let themselves be beat up in all the tech journals for nothing. Right? And worse yet, this guy loses his job. What does that do? That only confirms people's suspicions. I mean, to me, and maybe this is a different business mentality. Major Nelson came out. He's a Microsoft PR guy. And wrote a blog post about Adam leaving the company. It should have also ended with, "Oh, by the way, we're not using it as DRM," and that would end the entire discussion. Thoughts?
I think it's not just the DRM, though. I mean, I think that's a huge, and part of it is Microsoft is pushed by content owners outside of just video game makers. They're also pushed by Hollywood because they want to do a lot more. There's a huge element that goes way beyond just playing video games. I agree it's a big part of it, and I think that's the biggest part that people are hung up on. Like being able to resell used games is a big concern, and honestly, it would topple the business models of a lot of businesses out there.
GameStop would be out of business tomorrow.
It'd be a huge problem for GameStop. But the problem is it's not just about the games. And so Microsoft's not looking at just how it's going to affect the game market. They want to be an entertainment device. They want to be able to deliver ads. They want to be able, they've patented all kinds of things where the Xbox is this key part of an entire experience that requires internet. It's just fundamental.
A patent doesn't equal a product, right?
I think no, absolutely not. But it does potentially signal intent.
These days I feel like patents just, stockpiling missiles just in case.
I agree, but the patent's like using the Kinect to determine who's in the room to tailor ads to them, like, weight loss ads and things like that. That seems pretty specific.
Yeah, possibly. Again...
But you have to be online all the time to be retrieving those metrics and pulling down most relevant ads and all those kinds of things. It just requires internet connectivity, even when you're not playing a video game.
But the question is, does not having the connection make the console not function, period? Because let's be honest, the current consoles without an internet connection kind of suck too. So where does it become, when you say, when I'm reading these articles on The Verge, by the way, The Verge feels that they're going to use it as a Comcast set-top box.
Well, that's why it is like some deal they have, but it's going to be specific to...
I would be very surprised if that's how it comes out.
Well, I don't they do that now with the 360? For certain markets,
It's an app on the 360, but it's not like...
Okay.
It's what they're saying is you would go to Comcast, and instead of them sending you a crappy Motorola box, they'd send you a 720. To me, required means that if it cannot hit the server when you turn it on, it is not going to work. Right? You're going to get an error message.
With a Chromebook, does it?
Right, and that's a more mobile platform. I could be wrong. They could really do this, and in which case, that's crazy.
Let's get one thing straight. If they don't do it this time, they could always do this is Microsoft, and Microsoft effing loves SKUs. They might have multiple SKUs, and one, the higher end SKU requires connectivity all the time. Right. Or maybe the opposite. The lower end requires connectivity all the time, and the higher end has local storage and doesn't require connectivity, and you pay more for that.
Well, they're all going to have local storage because just the textures for these games are going to be too much to stream.
Yeah, I think if they don't do it in this one, they absolutely will do it in the next one.
Well, my thought is, this is definitely the future. Adam is right about that. Adam Worth is right.
Well, and keep in mind, just to put in perspective how much technology changes during the lifespan of these consoles. When these consoles launched, HD was brand new. It wasn't like the fact that the Xbox 360 can only do 720p was like no big deal because that's what a lot of TVs could only do.
Exactly. And that's my point. Why not patch it in a year or 2 years when the world is ready as a patch?
Yeah, I suppose so.
And to me, listen. Let's talk about business here, right? If I'm Microsoft and I can go to the game publisher and say, how you guys don't like GameStop, and how you guys don't like piracy. If you make your game exclusive to us for 3 months, we're going to give you this great DRM. Or you make some extra content exclusive to us. That would be great. Unfortunately, you need enough people to have a good enough internet connection for that DRM not to become a PR nightmare. Which it will anyway, but you need the people who are yelling and screaming on the internet to just come off as people who hate Microsoft. Like, ironically, after Adam Worth lost his job, Xbox Live went down for almost the whole weekend. Exactly. So you can't.
That is pretty ironic.
It's the EA SimCity situation. You can't tell everybody it's going to be fine, and we're doing this because you people are pirates, and which is basically EA's problem. And then have your network crash, and it's just not ready. But patch it in a year and a half, 2 years. It will be a great bargaining chip with publishers. Because, let's be honest, Activision would love to force you to be always online.
Sure.
Nothing, and EA already does it with PC games.
Yep. That's where it's already happening.
Yeah, there is nothing that they would want more. Oh, actually, there is one thing, getting rid of GameStop. If they could, or force GameStop to only sell new games.
It'll be interesting to see what happens. I hate being this guy, but if they did go only online and that actually like got to the point where you couldn't even really use it without an online connection, which I doubt that. But if like the majority of the games only played online, I wonder if it would spur just more mobile, because a lot of mobile games support offline.
Well, if I have to say, if it does on 0 day come out that it's always online and it won't work if it's not, I have a feeling Sony will be licking their lips.
Let's talk practical though. Why not always online? I mean, there's pretty much never a time I don't have internet connectivity at my house.
Right.
And it's more of a big deal on mobile than it is when you're in your house where you have a wired connection to your house.
Right. And that was my initial point, right? The people who are buying a $500 console at launch probably have decent connections. It's not that it won't work. It's that people will feel like it doesn't work or feel like it's DRM. And that marketing message is not good.
I almost wonder if they just don't even make a big deal about it. It's just
They
like
have
maybe
to.
things. No, I just wonder if things just don't work. Like it's like they
No,
maybe don't even bring it up, and then just by the way, yeah, these things don't work without connectivity.
because of so that's understood. The question is it DRM? That is the main question right now.
Yeah, I suppose
And
so.
and if Adam Orth hadn't said anything, this would just be a rumor that the Microsoft haters were pushing. But now that someone at such a high level of Microsoft got all snappy about it, does lend some credence to it. Like even I'm a little like, wow, if they do that, I might rethink. I was definitely all in on the next Microsoft console.
I'm kind of surprised. See, I guess I just look at it from the other angle. To me, I'm going to be surprised if they don't. And I know what you're saying. They could patch it in and blah blah blah. I understand. I can't picture where
But they don't
Microsoft
have
wants to take that
if
thing.
If Sony's not doing it, they don't have to.
Maybe they want to do more than what Sony's doing.
For what? For the publishers? That would be the only good reason.
To get something, to get, tit for tat.
To leverage.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see how that plays out in Best Buy. We'll see.
I mean, if Microsoft has a very, very, very long history of making very specific. I mean, the very implementation and deployment of HDCP would not have been possible if it were not for Microsoft on the PC side. They specifically worked with the motion picture industry to make sure that would be standardized across the HDMI connection. I mean, Microsoft has been kowtowing to the publishing industry for the better part of 15 years now, and they have always been on the leading edge of giving whatever they want to get something.
Well, and to be fair, when the original 360, or was it the original Xbox came out, it was broadband only, which was a big controversy at the time.
Right? Oh, I remember that, yeah.
So actually...
They were the leader on that, too.
This may just be history repeating itself, and in 6 months, in 12 months, after... from the date of the launch, this may be a non-issue.
I am so far convinced that it's going to be an always-on machine, that what I'm actually more worried about is, will it have a physical media slot, or is it only going to have like an SD card slot and a USB port?
It's gonna everything I've seen is gonna have a media slot. But anyway, what does this mean for developers, right? That's actually a really good thing for developers. Right, always online DRM is actually relatively good for you. Always online with social integration is great for you if you're an indie game developer, because that's how you're going to get a lot of your sales.
Yeah,
like that's the other side of this coin. As a consumer, kind of sucks. As someone who might be interested in looking at the platform, yeah, I kind of want everything to always be online.
Yeah, and
here's some news for you: your iOS apps. Eventually, the App Store has to be able to get a heartbeat. So you're already using always online tech, and you don't know it. And maybe you're right. Maybe they just don't say anything, and they do it, and for 90% of the people, it works. Yeah.
Maybe.
I mean, from a development perspective, if they really open up XBLA and it's always online, you can always sell in-app purchases. You can always encourage people to share your app on. Actually, I don't know what network Microsoft would be okay with you using. Probably Twitter.
Facebook. They have a stake.
That's right. They're buddies with Facebook.
Yeah.
Anything but Google+, but there's no right API to Google+ anyway. So, yeah.
Oh, it's an interesting situation if they did open up Xbox Live, and that's the huge if here and I think you're kind of just glossing over that point a little bit, but we have discussed it in detail in the past. If they did that and it was always online, there could be an indie developer gold rush to get to that console, because the big boys, they'll have a couple of launch titles. But there's going to be major gaps to fill.
Well, and also Sony has very actively been courting independent developers.
Yeah.
Which is way out of character for them.
And they've been getting good response too. I've been seeing a lot of positive buzz around the new PlayStation from developers. They're saying some are saying it's the next generation console that they've already decided.
And to me, that is a bigger risk to Microsoft than this always online nonsense.
Yeah.
If they lose that whole market, which granted isn't a huge market, but
they're ahead. And I think it'd be funny if they did. It would be so far. The Xbox has been this persistent Microsoft that could story where it's an underdog and they've continued to dump money into it, but it's actually it's a great example of how Microsoft can take their riches and invest in something and just through sheer market force eventually get into a successful position. Now this, we have never seen this point, because the last time the console generations came around, the 360 hit a few months early, and so it got a leg up, and I think it was a huge benefit to the 360 over the PlayStation 3. It got a lot of traction, got a lot of buzz, and it captured the market. And I think it was during the holiday time. Now, if they miss that this round, could be interesting. We could see. Could be a little different this time around. Don't know. All right, Mr. Dominic, anything else you want to touch on?
No, I think that's it. I think, again, just like the Ouya, we'll have to wait and see.
Yep. We got a lot of stuff we'll be covering down the road. The Ouya and all kinds of stuff.
This fall, this winter is going to be, especially for game development, I think it's going to set the tone for probably the next 6 years.
I'm going to start saving my pennies right now. Okay, everyone, well, if you want to get a hold of us, you can hit the contact link in the top of our site, or email us, coderradio@jupiterbroadcasting.com, or start a thread in our subreddit, coderradio.reddit.com. Don't forget you can join us live Mondays at 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern, over at jblive.tv. And go follow Mr. Dominic over on his blog. Where is that, Mr. Dominic?
That is mdominic.com.
Of course, he's on Twitter, too. We'll have links to that in the show notes, as well as links to my profiles. Mr. Dominic, thanks for the great show.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning this week's episode of Coder Radio. Thanks to our fantastic chat room for joining us. We'll see you right back here next week.